Hello everyone, welcome back to another review. Today we're looking at the Double Eagle Noveske Ghetto Blaster. It's the new kid on the block. This rifle has really surprised me in every way possible. I think DE have dealt with a lot of the old issues with the N4, and if Double Eagle keep going in a direction that they've been going, I'm very excited to see what they have installed for us. So less chatting and let's get a move on to the rifle itself. So what comes in the box anyways? In the box you're going to find your cleaning rod, the gun itself, a manual, and in the manual you're going to find your official licensing card from EMG, a speed loader, as well as a 35 round standard mag. Now I've been told that the new mags are just a carbon copy of the TM Stat mags. I will be doing a separate video on these magazines itself because they are quite interesting. There's a few details I want to dive into. Well, let's dive straight into the gun itself. At the front you have the Cherry Bomb muzzle device. It is a replica of the Cherry Bomb muzzle by Q. Currently I don't know any QD suppressor that will fit this particular muzzle. However, if you know any such device, suppressor exists, please drop a comment down below, drop a link, even better. Now on the QD point of view, what concerns me is the fact that this particular muzzle device is not grub screwed down, so you can twist it off if you want. So it's not, in my opinion, so good for QD, but I'll be interesting to see if there's anything out there for it. Now moving back, we have the rail. You can either get the Ghetto Blaster in the 7 or the 9-inch variation. The rail itself is a 3rd generation NHR rail from Noveske. So it looks slightly different to the N4. Instead of a M-lock rail on the 6 o'clock direction, you now have a Picatinny. And as per usual, you've got M-lock on the 9 and 3 o'clock direction, plus a monolithic rail system on top of the gun. Oops. Now, in true EMG fashion, everything on the rail itself is correctly labeled with the correct marking, etc. So that is really nice to see. And I must say, the quality feels solid. The whole gun just feels solid, which is really, really nice, especially for gas blowback. You don't want any of the wobbliness in some of the other guns we have all had our hands on. Now, moving back, on the upper receiver, we have the Noveske logo on the bolt itself, which is lovely. They've retained that bit of a feature. And then we, of course, have the super badass charging handle, as per usual. And then what is a really nice touch is on the dust cover, we have now ourselves a stereo. Now moving down to the lower, we have markings from Noveske everywhere. We have it on the rear takedown pin as well as the normal bit where you have the Noveske logo stamped. And one of my favorite features now on the Ghetto Blaster, lost my word there for a second, is the selectors. One is ambi. I used to hate ambi selectors, but after using it for quite a while now, trying to get used to it, it really isn't that much of a problem. Of course, it comes down to personal preference, but I really like this, and the fact that it is now a 60-degree throw for the semi, and then your normal 180 throw for full auto, it is really nice. I'm a huge fan of 45-degree or 60-degree throw selectors. So there you go. It now comes stock, what normally would have been an upgrade kit for your MWSs. And then that's not the only thing that's ambidextrous. You now have an ambidextrous mag release, which is really nice. And then you also have an ambidextrous bolt release. Now, the bolt release on the Ghetto Blaster is a nice feature. However, I personally still prefer the bad levers for your ambi bolt release, solely because on the bad lever you can hold the bolt back with just the one hand. I will demonstrate this here. This is my MWS. So if I have a bad lever here, if I want to hold the bolt back, I can do this just by pushing up on the bad lever, and then that locks the bolt back. And I can drop it just so. However, I can't do that on the Noveske. The Noveske if I want to hold the bolt open for whatever reason, clearing the magazine or whatnot, I still have to turn the gun around and hold it with my other hand. And then I can release it with my index finger. I know it's probably not a huge deal for most people, but for me, that's just one of those things that I think about for my standard SOP when I'm running a gas blowback rifle. So there is that. Yeah, and then furthermore, on the lower, we have a Magpul style pistol grip with a compartment at the bottom for your batteries and whatever you want to put in it, sweeties, jelly beans, if you wish. And then lastly, you have the flared magwell, which makes a much easier reloading. I'm a fan of the flared magwell. Now, I've saved the trigger to the last because there's quite a few bit of a feature in the trigger on this particular model. So the trigger itself is a Geisley style flat trigger. The trigger is really light. As I've mentioned in my N4 videos, I am a huge fan of the Double Eagle MWS triggers. Is that there's barely any take up and it's quite a light trigger. You can feel the wall straight away and then off it goes. And then the reset is really nice and clear, very audible and very tactile. And then there's, again, no take up. And the wall is right there. So I honestly really like the trigger itself, but what is new and is a big selling point from Double Eagle themselves is that they use a finishing technique called the QPQ, which stands for quench, polish, quench. That is in all its internal components. And for those people that might not know what that is a finishing technique that gives a component a much better wear resistant, corrosion resistance, and a fatigue strength, better fatigue strength. To go in what they are, wear resistant, corrosion resistant, they're kind of self-explanatory. But fatigue strength is basically how many times a component can come under stress without fatigue and failure. And for a part to move, every time it fires, which is the trigger component, you kind of want the component to be as reliable and will not fail, as possible. So having that finishing on it is really quite nice. Now going back to the rear of the stock, we have a PDW style stock. It takes a short buffer weight and a much smaller buffer spring as well. So be advised, you can't just use your standard MWS buffer weights or buffer springs. And I do understand that several companies have started already making or developing or in the process of manufacturing of upgrade parts for the buffer system. So you have quite a few bit of upgradability for that. And then the stock itself is 3 position. You have fully collapsed, extended 1, and fully extended. And then at the rear on the buffer tube itself, you will also find a QD plate as well. So here I've got some 0.02 gram BB loaded up, and what we're going to do is that we're going to do a quick FPS test. I have some V12 loaded in here. Currently it is quite cold in the workshop, just so all the viewers can see the Ross V12. So it is quite a higher pressure, but for Scotland in the current winter, V12 is what we run. And also, when I was filling up the mag, I was quite surprised to see that they even replicated the inlet valve. Some of the TM, well, all the TM mags, when you fill them in, once it's full, it will spurt gas back out at you. It's a very TM feature, and we have it on these Double Eagle mags as well. So that's nice. Right, let's give it a shoot. And we have lockback. So that was exactly 35 round, a full mag. And as we can see from the result itself, we started at 1.25 joule, which is, you know, a bit hot for your most indoor sites, and it dropped down to 0.91. So there is quite a bit of a drop from 366 FPS to 313. Yeah, it's to be expected from a standard gas, you know, out of the box. I would expect a better performance if you upgrade the gas router, put in a different nozzle perhaps, and change out the hop rubber. So that is, you know, perfectly adequate for your normal indoor skirmishes. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the Noveske, the new mags. You know, visually speaking, it looks brilliant. And honestly, from looking side by side to a standard TM magazine, there is virtually no difference. Other than potentially the material is slightly different. So your standard MWS mags are slightly shinier than the Noveske ones. But other than that, weighs about the same, feels really solid. You know, there really is no discerning difference to the two mags. What I'm really interested to find out, probably in another video, and I'll go into a little bit more depth into it, is that what are the components are like internally. Is it fully TM magazine compatible, i.e. the mechanism inside, the inlet valve, you know, all the inside bits and pieces. I wonder if they can be swapped with a standard MWS mag. If it could, that'd be awesome. We like compatibilities. The Noveske N4 and the Ghetto Blaster is already fully TM compatible, so having more of it compatible is really, really good. Especially where, you know, DE have lacked in the past variations is their magazines. And I've said it in the N4 video that their Gen 1 magazines are not very desirable. Gen 2 are slightly better. Gen 3s are probably their best mag, but now with these mags shipping, there will be these look great. And from when I have shot this, tested it, these performed really well as well. So yeah, I do believe that you can buy these separately, and I think they go for MSRP about £70, which, you know, if you're in the UK, you really just have the crap end of the stick. You know, the standard TM mags are going about 70 now as well because of the import tax, etc., etc. It's not the cheapest to buy, but if you can find these Double Eagle ones slightly cheaper, you know, they are a good shout as well. So I just want to spend some time on talking about that. So the next thing I want to see is how the stock hop issue has been addressed from the old N4. Because the old, you know, the N4s, they're great looking guns, they're really nice shooting. However, the stock hop is just not really good enough. So I took the Ghetto Blaster out to the depot, which is in an indoor site at the Port of Glasgow. I took it there, gave it a shot, put up a target, roughly about 25 meters, put some .25 tracer BBs. I didn't really have to adjust the hop, and then here is the result. Target at roughly 35 meters, running .25 tracer. Well, as you can see that the hop issue has been resolved. I was able to shoot at a target 25-30 meters away. As I say, you know, the size of my face, two hand put together roughly. My face isn't that big, geez. But shooting from a unsupported position, a couple of flyers at the beginning, but I was able to get my most shots on target. So that's not bad for a stock gun out of the box. The performance is way better than what the N4 would have been able to do anyways. Now, is this a gun for you? To summarize, this is a small PDW with ample amount of what I would consider aftermarket upgrade already available, already installed into this particular rifle, such as the 60-degree MB selector, the MB bolt release, MB mag release, and you know, some people pay good money to put a PDW stock on their TM MWSs, as TM don't actually make a PDW. So for about sub £500, you get a lot. Personally, I'll probably be picking one up at some point. I have this one lent to me by a good friend of mine, Andrew. Thank you, Andrew. Shout out to him. So yeah, thank you very much again for your time. And I will be putting some upgrade parts in this particular Ghetto Blaster. So stay tuned for those videos. And as always, if you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. If you have anything else to say, you know, I'd love to hear your discussion. And if you're interested in seeing other MWS or gas blowback build that I do give us a follow on Instagram. The link is in the profile. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.